Okay, so I've just started the archiving for this one, so that we can record and keep the session, so you can come back to it. Okay, so I think we'll start our webinar session. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the Global Careers Service webinar on self-marketing. My name is Denny Lyle, and I will be running this webinar today. Firstly, I would just like to go through a few setup items that will be quite helpful to us in making this a successful webinar. And then secondly, I'll walk you through today's agenda. So I'm just going to swap the slide over, and so there should be a new slide coming up with webinar protocol. So to help with the smooth running of this webinar, I have muted everyone who's attending via the computer. And if you happen to be on the telephone, although I think I'm the only person on the phone at the moment, then actually pressing *6 will mute yourself. But I can't hear any background noise, so that's excellent. If you are outside of Europe, then you might find that the slides do take a little bit of a time to load up on your computer. I've noticed that some people do have a good signal and some people have a poorer signal. So the slides should be coming up. If the signal is really bad, then what we would suggest is that you exit and re-enter, because we're just at a bit of the mercy of the internet as always. And for all of you who are on the computer connection, there are going to be times when I am going to ask you, do you have any questions? And the best thing to do is, just as we've been doing in the chat facility, is to write your questions there. As I was saying a little bit earlier, because I am presenting, it is difficult to be reading those and presenting. So if you could just leave your questions until I ask for them, that would be really good, be helpful. Also, there'll be times when I might ask you to participate on how good or poor you think certain things are. And just below the list of people's names, you have a smiley face icon. And if you click on that, you can raise your hand, do thumbs up, thumbs down, smiley faces. So we get a feel and a bit of participation from other people. So thank you for listening to those useful tips. And now we'll have a look at the agenda for today. So I'm just swapping to the agenda slide, which should be coming up. So we're covering the topic of self-marketing, and we're going to talk about building your resume content, basic resume tips, some resume different styles and types for different things, and letters or email that accompany the whole self-marketing aspect. Now, I do appreciate that we do have quite a diversity of people from different countries attending today. So this webinar covers what we feel is generally applicable best practice globally, although I would advise you to find out what your cultural differences are and how you would apply what we're learning today into those cultural differences. And local mentors and local alumni would be a really good way of actually doing this. Also, if there is anything where you've got some really useful information that we could add to future webinars, then if you could let the Global Career Service know, then we can incorporate those into further webinars. So let's do a little bit of a poll. So how many of you have a current resume? So if you want to click, and if you have an up-to-date resume, if you just like to click thumbs up, and if you don't, then just click thumbs down. So if you'd like to participate, how many of you have a current, kind of pretty good up-to-date resume? Thumbs up, thumbs down, or ticks are very useful. Okay, so we've got a little bit of variation. Anyone else gonna thumbs up or thumbs down? Okay. So there was kind of a couple of people had, a couple of people didn't. So let's actually have a look at what we need to do. So first of all, we're just going to focus on the resume. But before you write or update your resume, it's worth considering what you have actually got to offer and what you want to do within what you have to offer, and then balancing that against what does the market want at the moment. So firstly, you need to think about what have you got to offer. What skills, knowledge, experience, and abilities have you got to offer? For example, you might be very good at negotiating or have turnaround experience or are good at developing people. And for each one, it's important to be able to demonstrate it with a tangible business benefit, because that's what makes the recruiter kind of really pick up, I can see how good that person is. I can see how they would fit into the role. If you could do it in that area, would you come and do it for us? So, for example, how are you going to demonstrate that you're a good line manager? Rather than just saying, I'm a good line manager, how would you actually demonstrate that? There are a number of very good exercises on the Global Careers portal under self-marketing. And also, you can ask colleagues or bosses what talent they think that you have. And appraisals are another good source of feedback, as are friends and customers and suppliers. So firstly, that's about what you think you have to offer. And then next, you need to think about what you want to do more of within your list above. On my first resume, I had a section on some quality training that I had done, and which I was particularly proud of. And at one meeting with a potential client, the person was very focused on that and how someone with that experience could be useful to him. And I realized it was on my resume for the wrong reasons. It was about, oh, here, look at that. But I didn't want to do any more of that. That came off my resume pretty fast. So look at the combination of what you're good at and what you enjoy, and think about how much you're prepared to compromise on enjoying your role and how much a potential employer would see you as being able to demonstrate that you're good at each aspect. Also, you have to consider how filtering your CV down will affect your resume the next time you move roles. How will it look to a potential employer? Can you explain the shift in emphasis or direction so that it all connects together into a coherent career path? And it is particularly relevant at the moment that you have a coherent path, that it builds, that you are a something. It's exceedingly important, especially in the West at the moment, where there's lots of people on the job market. You need to put together a very coherent CV that backs itself up and shows progression. So the other thing, if you are looking for a slight shift in emphasis, make sure that it doesn't take you away from other things that you want to do. And therefore, if you want to be a VP or a general manager, you've got a bit of sales experience, maybe you need to get some operational experience. So just make sure when you're starting to move the emphasis of your CV that that's taking you in a longer term career path that you want. Lastly, you really need to understand what the market is looking for at the moment. You want to research to find out which of your skills and attributes are the most desirable for current roles. Use the internet job sites, adverts, your network and employers to find out what this is. Talk to people in companies that would employ people doing the role you wish to do. Focus on what really differentiates candidates and find out what makes a good candidate stand out. What experience or skills have they got? And also, you really need to find out what gaps you have in your experience or skills, and then think about how you can best bridge those if you can at all. For example, in a project manager, Prince 2 is often a requirement, and if you do not have it, then a lot of companies will not even interview you. So the decision is whether to spend some time and money becoming Prince 2 certified or not. And sometimes you might want to take an intermediate role or a lower level role to gain the experience you need to get into the role you really want. Okay, so that's the first thing you need to think about. What can I do? What do I want to do? But then also, what does the market want as well? So once you've kind of got that information together, it's now time for you to have a look at an actual resume, creating your resume. So I'm just going to swap the slides over. and just put a slide up with resume basics on it. So let's just talk about some of these basics. Many people think that a resume should be a document that details all of your career history, that it's a record of everything you've done. Now, in Japan and some of the Asian companies, that is exactly what it is, because in those cultures, predominantly jobs are found through contacts. In Europe and America, the CV plays a slightly different role, and it's more about selling yourself. It's more like a sales document to grab their attention. And if you can grab their attention, you can get an interview. And a CV that's designed to grab attention makes it a little bit different. So you need to find in your local market, if it's a lot of jobs are found through networking or recommendations, the CV is likely to be just more of an actual detailed career history. However, in a lot of the Western countries, and especially in Europe, it is much more that you send in a CV, and it is through selling yourself and differentiating yourself on a CV that is likely to help get you the interview. So think about that for all resumes, first appearances count, and think about it from your view. If you see a sheet of paper full up of text, what do you tend to think? Oh, you tend to think, oh no, do I have time to read all this? Whereas if a CV is laid out very well, has a lot of white paper, therefore not much black ink, then it's very pleasing to the eye, creates a really good first impression, and already the person that's about to read it is feeling good about you. And that's a really good place to start. So fewer words really, but the ones that really count. Most resumes are only 2 pages long. For scientists, where publications are important, and for some technical areas where training is very important, I would suggest putting these in an addendum. So you retain a basic 2-page resume format, and people can read the addendum if they wish. Make sure that, again, that the layout is professional and it quickly connects to the needs. Excuse me one moment. So again, in the climate that we certainly have over in Europe and America, where we have a lot of people on the job market, you really need to make it easy for the employer and the recruiter to see that you can do their job. So really put the effort in to connect to their job. Most roles could have from 50 to 400 resumes to go through. And so they are just looking for a reason to reject people. Now remember, the key advertising space, the bit that really makes the most difference, is the top half of the first page. So that's where you really must connect. And we'll talk about how to do that in a few minutes. Ensure that it has no spelling mistakes. You are MBA students. You should have lovely layouts and no spelling mistakes. Also tend to use Arial and Times Roman. 11-point font or 10 is quite useful. Larger fonts for headings and text. Make sure that your bullets and your indents all line up. And don't use things like underlining because they just add black ink. And actually, you've got enough with the font sizing. Italics are a little bit dangerous because they don't tend to scan very well. So it's better to just keep to normal text as well. And most resumes are expected to be black text on a white or cream background or paper. So colour does tend to put people off. Unless it's in a very creative role, then these days you might actually have a website instead of a CV. But again, with people using things like iPads, it is worth checking how well does your CV look on an iPad. I was looking at a gentleman's CV only yesterday on an iPad, and it looked actually nicer than on a piece of paper. And it laid out very well and fitted the iPad very well. So it's also worth having a look at that. Make sure that your name is quite large, 16, 18 point bold on each page, both pages. Put your contact details in a much smaller font size because it doesn't get you a job on the first page. Just put a number or a contact on the second page in case they lose the first page. And if it's 2 pages, you don't have to worry about page numbering. So remember to use good action verbs. There's a hot verbs article in the portal, so such as led, created, evaluated, designed, project managed. Again, look at the job vacancies and just see the type of words that they use. If you do print out and take paper copies, of which you might do when you go to networking meetings, then really use a very nice high quality paper, 100 GSM. It gets you noticed for all the right reasons. And don't ever fold or staple paper copies because it just makes them more difficult for people to put them through photocopies and things. So let's just have a chat now about the different sections of a resume. It may vary from time to time, the style that's required, but we're going to look at what is useful for the majority of applications. So the first thing that you need is a profile. It's the very first thing at the top of the very first page. It goes below your name, below your contact details, and it puts you into a job category, a box. And that means it's incredibly easy for the recruiter to understand which roles you can do. For example, a project manager, a client account lead, a sales director. You really need to make it easy. And because it's not your job title, it's what you want to do, then you can make that what you want it to be. As long as your CV backs it up, then your profile is how you would sum yourself up. And again, you really need to be very clear and pragmatic in your profile. So the profile provides a short summary of your expertise combined with the personal characteristics so that the reader has a very quick understanding of who you are, what you do, and how you do it. Please make it incredibly pragmatic, very much about the role, the function, the experience that you've had. And be careful about using statements that anyone could do, like team player and highly motivated and things like that. And it's about 2 or 3 lines, and you tailor it within reason to the role that you're applying for. So let's actually just have a look at 2 examples. I'm just stopping the slides over. So we've got a slide up called Profile Branding. And as you can see, the top profile, a down-to-earth, open, straightforward solver of complex problems through the use of project and man management skills, a stable, calm, cooperative individual with a high level of energy and motivation to produce results against demanding targets. Strong, practical, logical, and objective characteristics combined with very free thinking, change-orientated and highly developed flair for new and different ways of delivering. So that's one style of profile, and below it is a second style of profile, an operations director with a deep and broad experience across all manufacturing operations functions, possessing excellent knowledge of lean tools and a significant track record with 10 years experience of lean implementation within 2 different business cultures at director and factory manager level. So just looking at the 2 profiles, what do we think about the top profile? If you just look below where the names all are, you've got the little smiley face icon. If you just click on that, if you think that's an incredibly useful profile, the top one, a down-to-earth, open, straightforward problem solver, you know exactly what role you'd give that person. Or are you thinking, I'm not really sure what that person does. I can imagine, but I'm not sure. If I had a project manager or if I had a team leader or a sales director, what would I employ him? So maybe if you think it's a great profile, you want to put the thumbs up sign. And if you think it's, I don't really know what that profile's about, maybe you want to put a thumbs down sign. So shall we just see what people think? you want to do a thumbs down or a thumbs up sign? Is anyone just going to say whether they think that's a useful profile? So do you think the top profile is useful? Thumbs up if you think it is, thumbs down if you don't. Yeah. See, that's the problem. It's not specific enough. If you had a job, it's very hard to match the top profile. Now, the bottom profile is very clear about what this person is. They're an operations director. So if you are looking for an operations director and you want an operations director that's done manufacturing in factories, and you want someone who can do process improvement. So lean is a really focused methodology around factory improvement. A little bit bigger than that, but that's what it is. So with the operations director, you immediately know, I'm looking for an operations director, here's an operations director. So please, when you're looking at profiles, the bottom profile is a much better one to be going for. And on the actual careers portal, there are other examples of CVs, but the bottom profile is the style that you're looking for. And very important these days, because if they're confused about what you do, you just go in the bin. They cannot be bothered to look. You have to make it easy for them. So let's now just have a look at the first page of the CV. I'm just swapping that over. So just in front of you, you can see at the top is that profile, and then we have the rest of the page of the CV. So the next section, directly below the profile, is the key skills. And these are what key skills that you think you have. So it's very important to put down key skills here that match the job. Now, usually people have a longer list of, say, 10 to 12, maybe, key skills. So what you're actually going to create is what we call a master CV. And then what you do when you send your CV out to applications or to contacts, you will choose 5 or 6 of the key skills that you think are most applicable. Otherwise, people just aren't going to read them. So finding your key skills can be a little bit more difficult. And so both with your key skills and maybe with your profile, you really want to get people to help you. Ask your boss, ask your colleagues, ask your mentors. What do you think my key skills are? What talents do you think I have got? And then do remember that whatever you're putting in the key skills section, you are saying, I would like to do more of this. So if you have a key skill that you're good at, but you don't want to do more of or a lot of, then you probably don't want to put it in that section. Put some of the other ones. The other thing is it's very good if the key skills aren't just words like leadership ability or communicating to senior managers. As you can see, the ones here just have a little bit more depth. They have a little bit more of what's it about for this person. And again, I think that's quite important to put there. If you are applying for a technical job, then getting the technical requirements, so the Prince 2, or if it's requiring some computing protocols, that's a good place also just to put in as your last key skill point. Or if they're asking for language, fluency in a language, just if it's that important to get the job, then really put it up the top. So the largest section on a CV is that of the roles that you've had in your career. So it's the career summary or history, or the resume summary history. A one-page resume may just be a short list of these roles and responsibilities. And whatever style that you are doing with your resume, it's really important to get the relevant information and use the fewest words. So usually the last item on the first page is your most recent role, because that is the one that is most relevant. If the last role was quite short, then you might need to put your last 2 roles in it. But normally it's just that last role. And if, of course, you've achieved quite a lot in that role, then definitely that's a good one to have just on its own. And what you've got here, first of all, is the company. If it's well known, then you don't actually need to put in, what the company does, this person has. But if it's Accenture or AT&T, people know who they are, so just put the name because it just uses up space otherwise. Then you want to put your job title and you want to put the date, how long you've been in that role. If you can do months and years, then that is very useful to do. Having a gap isn't a good idea. So thinking about how to handle gaps, or if you can just roll them through. Going and traveling or taking breaks is quite different, but kind of gaps that are a little, I was out of work for a very long time, they're a little difficult to explain. You kind of want to make sure that you have a nice coherent career with all the dates adding up. But if there's a gap between the dates, it does cause suspicion. So when you're looking at the elements around your career, the first thing that you want to do after you are putting in your job title, the first thing you want to do is sum up the size and scope of complexity of the role. So you want to put in 3 or 4 lines that really do just sum up your role, the size and complexity that you can handle. And if you can, putting in easy to grasp facts, such as the number of people who reported to you, the size of the budget, that's really easy. For people like if you do client account lead, the size of the account, was it $40,000, $100,000, or $400,000? Was it local customers, regional customers, maybe EMEA, or global clients? All those types of things give people an idea of what you can handle and if it will suit their role. Also, you want to put in any responsibilities that just stand you out a little bit. Not just things such as my staff did appraisals as a line manager. We kind of know line managers do that. But maybe you chaired an important forum or committee which gave you access to the board, which your level didn't usually get. Put that type of thing in. And now the next key part is the bit that is really important because it stands you out. It's the achievement section with each role. It says, what did you actually do with the role you had? Many people have the same job description. So the important bit is, what did you do differently? That's why they'll employ you. So these are your achievements. And even with a 1-page CV, if possible, put in at least one of these for your most recent jobs, and they must grab attention. So like you can see here, kind of 2 or 3 lines, jargon-free, no unnecessary words. And the recruiter will be looking at those achievements thinking, wow, if you can do that for that company, then could you then do this for us as well? So I'm going to take some questions in just a little bit. I just want to cover achievements a bit more, and then I will talk about changing careers and things like that. But let me just cover the next section at the moment. So let's just have a look at some achievements. I'm just going to change the slides over. Okay, so again, if we look at the achievements at the top, we've got 2 sets of achievements. The first, if you look at the first one, improved and managed process control system. Improved the process control system to be checked easily by all employees and responsible for controlling the system. So the first thing that's going to happen with the top set of achievements at interview, if of course they get one with those, the interviewer is going to say, so you say you improved the process control system. By how much? And if you can answer that question in the interview, you need to put it on your resume, because they'll assume that if you haven't put it on your resume, then actually it's not that good. And quite often when I ask people, how much have you improved it by, they go, oh, it was about 35%. And you're like, wow, that's impressive. So put it on. So again, if you look at the bottom set of achievements here, devised and implemented operation strategy thus improving productivity by 80% over 4 years, and quality metrics from 44% to 83%. So the bottom set does have this information in it, and it's much more impactful and grabs the attention. It's easy to get a feel for what this person can do and make happen. So at least the interview can check out how the bottom person achieved this. So you can check out, do we like the way the person actually managed to get those results? Well, were they easy to get? But at least that person is more likely to get to interview. Because interviewing the top person would just be risky. And often people write the top types of achievement as they want to save the best bit for the interview. The sad thing is that they're very unlikely to get interviews. So putting the business benefit first works really well. It says you're business focused. Figures work well, but also make sure that the story behind the achievement that you tell to the interview is good. Check it out with someone. Tell them the story behind that achievement and then find out what message it conveys about you. If it's not what you want, then leave that one off your resume. So if your resume says, well, it was a good year and the orders flowed in, then that's not good. It might be a 25% improvement you've got as an achievement, but you just sat there and did nothing. Where if you said, well, 25% improvement in a tough year, lots of industries were struggling to grow. I put together some compelling business cases, had to persuade the board, I had to rework the solution, and they learn a lot about how you get things done in tough times. And that's always a good story to tell. Let me just show you the second page of a CV. So there's the second page. So usually you put in 5 or 6 achievements in the last few roles. 3 or 4 for the second to last role and 2 for your furthest away role. The second, third roles go on your second page, as you can see here. Basically, anything before 2000, 2001 nowadays is just too long ago. So just collapse it into just earlier career. It's just too long ago. And it's a good way of saving paper and ink. So the final section you can see here is under general, and in the general section you might include qualifications. Always put your highest qualification. If you've got an MBA or you've got a degree, you don't need to put any of your other qualifications. Just make sure you really keep it relevant. Other training courses that you've done within companies, quite often you don't want to put on. So don't lie about your qualifications, because if they're wrong, then everything looks kind of wrong. You might want to also put on your second page if you are have memberships of professional bodies or position held, such as Board of Governors. Some people do want to put their interests on. Just think about, if you are asked about, I see that you like reading, that if you haven't read a book for a long time, then it's probably better to take that one off. If you are, a school mentor, or you run, you help in a charity, then that actually says quite a lot about you and could be very, very useful to actually put onto your CV. Some other common things that are put on resumes but aren't really required for most of them, and they can be unhelpful. So we don't tend to put your age on anymore, your date of birth, let them work it out. Often, yes, I've got a driver's license, just isn't, I think most of us don't actually need a driving license specifically to do our job. Again, referees, that's assumed, just leave them off, give them later. Salary expectations tend to put people off. Better to have that as a conversation. So just keep your resume a lot clearer. So that's it. The basic resume has a profile, key skills, roles, education, and a general section. And this is called a chronological resume, and it is the most common style that is used. Layouts and orders may vary. So for some people, you might want to put your education up front. You might, again, want to put your MBA right under the key skills, or put your name with MBA next to it. Now, before we just go through a couple of different types of resumes, does anyone have any questions? If you want to write a question, then I will just answer it. So do you have any questions? You write it in the chat room, then we'll have a look at them. Right. So, someone's just asked, is it possible to keep this presentation after the marketing webinar? Yeah, we're archiving this whole session, so you should get that on the Blackboard in a few days. Does anyone have any questions related to resumes? So anything that we've covered so far on resumes? So I've got a one here that says, if we want to change the job, function, role, then how do we go about editing it? I'm not entirely sure what you mean by the job, function, role. How do we go about editing it? How to put a CV about the different crowd. Is it okay for you? So most resumes are better if they are 2 pages. Quite often, if they're 3 pages long, they just have too much information on, and people just don't bother reading it. It also might say that you're a bit over the top with the amount of detail from that side of things. There's lots of different resume styles and options on the careers portal. So if you are, how can I go about putting an MBA at MBS on a resume? What I would do is, for any notable things like an MBA, if you think they're very relevant, is put them either in your profile or put them in your key skills area, maybe the top or the bottom of the key skills. And if you have less job experience and your MBA is quite important, then it is your most recent job. So for some people where you're doing an MBA full time, then put it as a recent job. If it's that important, make it the very top line job and then put your last job below that. So if you want to move into a different work stream, from technical to management, then past experience is irrelevant. That's very interesting, because at the moment, shifting quite a long way is difficult, because there's so many people that exactly match job roles on the market. So in Europe, and especially in the UK, people have a lot of choice about who they can employ. So your best option, if you want to move into a different work stream, is to really go in through using a networking route. And what your CV then does is it just gives you your credibility of where you are. The thing that I would say, though, even in a technical role, you need to think about achievements and aspects of that role that start to demonstrate that you do have managerial capability. Because that's the thing, isn't it? If you've been in a technical role, you're actually saying to someone, I want to go into a management role. Trust me, I'm good at being a manager. And they'll look at you and say, well, prove it. Why do you think you're good at being a manager? So my feeling would be, think about your roles, and especially for the most relevant recent one, is think about how can you start to put achievements that are more managerial orientated on it. That is what I would do. But network, because it's a little bit of a tough market. But if you're good at what you do and you want to do more of it, it's a great market to be in, because you'll get noticed. Okay, let's just have a look at a couple of different types of CVs, resumes. Okay. So this one is called an executive summary, and it might help actually with people that are wanting to switch across career sections. So it's very similar to a functional CV and a little bit different. So it has a profile, but the profile is just a little bit longer. Then what it does is it has your career history, which is basically a list of all of your different roles. If you have got a lot of blue chip companies, it's really good, because if you've worked for a lot of blue chip companies, that just opens doors. So if you've worked for some good companies, it's a good way of doing it. The next thing is that then just has your key achievements, and they can be any key achievement that you've had in the last 5, 6 years. So it means you can pull achievements that would have been on your second page and put them on your first page. The only downside is they quite often want to know where those achievements have come from. And then the last bit, you can put your education on. So really, the front page should leave people thinking, wow, I want to meet this person. And then the back page is just a very shorter version of like a functional CV. So it's mainly just your last 4 or 5 roles. So it's a very different way to do it. If you're looking for a very senior manager, director, MD, CEO type roles, any C-suite roles, then that's quite an acceptable way and maybe a slightly better way of doing a CV. Okay. Let's just have a look at a functional CV. So this is a different style and can be quite useful for when you are swapping sectors. So if you've done a lot of work in the IT sector, or you've been a manager and you want to be a coach, or you've been a manager in corporate or a project manager and you want to become a consultant, then you need to say, I know I've done this, but I think my key skills will lend themselves to a different type of role. And in doing that, a functional CV is a good way, a resume is a good way of doing it. So if you notice, you've got the profile at the top of the functional CV, and then underneath you actually have 4 or 5 key skills. And these are the key skills that you think that role requires. So this person is looking to do a senior analyst, and they have pulled out what they think are the key skills for that role. And then underneath the key skills, they put in achievements that demonstrate the key skill. So once you've done a chronological CV, you can reshape it into a functional resume. And this says, look at me with the skill set I have. And then under that, you just put in your roles that you've had and a few key points. Now, the only thing about a functional CV is that most people expect a chronological resume, and so they are a little bit more wary of a functional resume. But if you're networking and you want to really shift sectors, so again, if you're going from a technical role to a management role, this type of CV, resume format, may be a good option because you can pull out your management type skills and say, now let me demonstrate from other aspects where I can do those. So it might be like that. The second page is very similar. It's just a lot of the roles quite often, and you don't tend to put the achievements down. So again, remember, there are other versions of resumes on the careers portal, and it would be worth having a look at those. Now, if you are thinking of freelancing or contracting, then it might be worth you actually having a profile as opposed to a CV. Because if you are contracting or profiling, then people aren't quite so bothered about your career history. It's your competency that they are more focused on. So Peter is a Dutch gentleman and he works in the oil industry. So the top section above the line is basically a little bit of background around what Peter can do and what how he's built up his business and just some credibility. Below the line, the bottom half is about clients that he's worked with, the actual different areas of work that he would do. So, I can give you advice here. I can help you with this situation. I can help with strategy. I can help connect you to people. And then other areas are qualifications and publications and professional affiliations. So again, just to get a bit of a clearer view of this one, it should be on the portal, so go and have a look at that one. But simple layout, but this is a one-pager if you're thinking of contracting. So whatever resume you go for, I would suggest that once you have completed it, that you check it out with colleagues, mentors, bosses, friends. Ask them, is this who you think I am? Does this show the best side of me? And take it to people who might want to employ you and ask them again, you know, does this resume make me stand out? So go and get some people to check it out. Quite often you have to do just a couple of versions of them. Remember, for every role that you're going for, you are going to need to tailor it so that it is very clear that you can do that role. So once you get your CV master, you can then take out what you need to send to each role. And don't worry about mail shotting out to loads and loads of companies because it has a very, very low hit rate, about a 1% hit rate. Look for warm leads and look for people who can connect you and for actual opportunities. So that's resumes. Does anyone just have a couple of questions about any of the types of resumes? There are lots of different options and versions on the careers portal if you need them, but has anyone got any thoughts of resumes before we move on to covering letters and emails? Can we put the logos of companies? My thought would be, how does that help you get a job? So on your CV, on your resume, you tend not to put pictures of your photographs of yourself or company logos. Just keep it very text, and it's about you. Yes, I agree. This, I don't quite know what we've done with the slides, but they're not coming out very clear today, so I will feed that back because normally they're quite readable. So I'm sorry about that. It's interesting actually because on LinkedIn, if you use the social media, you should put a photograph because if you don't, people get suspicious. On CVs, unless it's certain countries like Germany, you have to put a photograph on. But in the UK, that would actually be quite damaging to do that. It tends to put people off rather than get people on board. So find out what works in your company. Yes. So just to summarize, yes, a resume should be short, 2 pages, relevant and highlight skills related to the job. Yes. Prove you can do their job by saying, I reduced this cost, I sorted out that problem. You have so got it, isn't it? I don't recommend graphics on a CV. If you are going for a more creative type role, then what a lot of people do is actually use a website set up as a CV. But for a normal CV, I would recommend just purely black and white text. In the United Arab Emirates, I think from my research I've done, the CVs work fairly similar. What I would suggest is that you just go and check that out. I do know in places like Japan, they are basically just a list and they do just put out what you have to done. But I think in most other countries, these CVs are quite applicable. But do check them out. Let's just have a look then at some of the other aspects that we need to think about when we're doing self-marketing. So there are some emails or letters, predominantly emails these days, that go with a resume. Also, if you're approaching a company direct, which you wouldn't do in every single country, and also if you're networking. When you are putting any extra information, so the email that you send when you attaching your CV, then they all have the same format. You need to introduce yourself, position yourself. It needs to have a key message. That's the real part of it. And then a strong conclusion, so you remain in control. So that's what you need to think about when you're doing anything and accompanying. So let's have a look at the first one. Okay, changing the slide over. So this is a covering letter. So this is being sent out, and it could be an email. It wouldn't be quite like a letter if it was an email, but the content could be an email. So it's going out with the resume. And really, what this is intended to do is say, look, you need to look at my resume. So it's about grabbing their attention. So at the top, it's got a very short positioning statement, very short. And then it's got 4 or 5 bullet points that sum up why you think you're the best fit. Some of the bullet points might come from your resume. It might be that you pull out one of your achievements because it's really important. Sometimes they're an overview. So, for example, quite often on a covering letter, if I'm doing something, I will put a senior operations manager with 14 years in the Mars Corporation in a variety of operational management roles, including budget responsibility and line management of global teams, because that says a lot about the type of roles and work that I've done. So just make sure they're the very key relevant areas that they're looking for. Keep them short. The conclusion's a little harder, but basically what you want to say is, I'm going to call you if you don't call me. So that's what you need to send out with your resume. And just remember, when I read this, if I was the recruiter, does it make me want to open up the resume? Because that's what that's about. Now, sometimes you're going to send a letter to a company that you think you would like to work for. So when we talk about direct approaches, we mean to a company that you genuinely think might have a reason to employ you. This is not about just cold calling. And it is not applicable in every country. In Asia, direct approach isn't normally a thing that you would actually do. So you might have to do a bit of research about the company. You might see that they are relocating, that they are merging, that they're making people redundant. So you need to think, why may they want someone like me and how might I fit in? It's then useful if you send this to the person that you might work for, because HR only knows about official roles and you're trying to get in through a networking route. So if you look at it, the positioning part of this letter actually states why you feel it's worth writing them. So here we're talking about you've got a lot of new technical staff, and I thought you might need a director of applications. Then the key message is, how can I help you? So I'm a senior manager of applications development, and it's very lovely, very good, clear positioning about the size of company and experience, very clear positioning about the type of work that he thinks would be relevant for you in your company. And then the strong conclusion is about getting a meeting. So, and here he's saying, I will contact you in a few days to set up an appointment, because of course he's the person that needs the appointment, so he's driving the process. So again, very nicely laid out, very, very easy to read, and it really is quite impactful. So that's a very good example of the types of extra letters that you're looking for. Sometimes if you've been networking, you might want to send a networking thank you letter or email. So this new slide, dear Mrs. Scott, is around networking. So once you've had the networking meeting, it is very good to thank the person for their time, and also it helps keep the door open so that you can go back to them. You kind of send these thank you emails out about 5 to 10 days after the meeting, and it's for 2 reasons really. The first reason is they're just about to forget you, and it reminds them of you and your name. So then they'll be subconsciously looking out for opportunities for you over a longer time frame. Also, it allows you to have actually done something with their advice. And as you can see here in the example, you can say how you used their advice and the results it actually had. So that's really good, because it says, yep, thank you, I did what you said and it worked. And they feel very good about that, and they'll be very happy to help you in the future. The strong conclusion can be a little bit more interesting, but basically you want to say, I'll keep you informed, I might get back to you. So again, a very nice example there of a thank you email that you might send. So the final one is actually a thank you email you might send after an interview. And that's not something that we tend to think about. If it's after an interview, it needs to go quite soon after the interview because this is about reinforcing. You need to send it to the people that interviewed you. The positioning here is a very quick thank you for your time, really nice to meet you. And the strong conclusion is kind of, just I look forward to hearing from you soon. The bit in the middle can be one of three things. It can be something where you're consolidating the connection. You really like the job. So that could be really good. And that's what this one's doing. It's about, I really liked what I heard and I just want to endorse I really liked it. It might be that you got asked a question and you felt you didn't answer it very well. So it could be that in the key message that you put in something like, well, a kind of answer to a question you answered badly, because that's a useful thing to do. It could also be something you've realized afterwards, gosh, I wish I'd said that. If I'd have said that, I'm sure you would have employed me. So it can be put in something like that. So that was covering off letters and emails. So direct approaches, thank you for interview, thank you for networking, and here's my resume. Has anyone got any questions about the emails and the letters that we've just covered? Or resumes, actually. Have you got any questions that you want to ask, further questions? How many chapters on it? Could you just help me on how many chapters on it? What do you mean by that? Do you mean paragraphs? Yeah, so the letters should be as brief as possible, normally about half a page. So let me go back to, let me just find the one that, so for me, this is a really good example. It's about half a page of A4. It's very easy to read, short paragraphs, nice bullet points. So out of the four that I showed you, even without reading it, this is the one that looks really, really nice. So the more it can be like that, the better. As you can see on the final one here, on this one, that center text, it's a little bit heavy to read that. So although this is a thank you, so it's a little bit more difficult. Any other questions? Would it be better to get their attention in the first lines of the letter? Okay, so yes, yeah. So let's go back to this one. The first paragraph there, the first sentence is really just like, this is the application I'm applying for. If we go back to this one, it's like, here's the application. When you look at these ones, your eyes are drawn to the bullet points. And the bullet points are the bits that grab attention. Martin, I agree where you're saying, I heard they don't spend much time on the letters. When you're sending an email to reply to an advert and you say, please find attached my CV, if you do it like that, quite often what they'll do is go, oh, okay, I'll just put that in my inbox and see it later. If, however, you open up an email and there's some bullet points which grab your attention and you think, wow, this guy's good, then you tend to open up the CV. So these letters, especially the covering emails, are intended to grab attention, to go, wow, let me actually open up the CV here and now. So that's the only thing they're for. Don't make it anything other than some really juicy little tasters where get them to open up your CV. Anything else that we've got? A second, I thought I saw one. Oh, can I just also say that although the slides have purple and pink and white and black backgrounds, your emails, your CVs really should be white backgrounds with black text. On paper, you might want to do just cream or off-white, but so the slides backgrounds. This is just what we've used for the slide set here. What about referring to other people both? Yes, so if you are sending a letter such as the one that is about, let me just find that one. So this is the one directly to a company. So if you don't know the person but they know someone you know, then your positioning statement might be Fred Blogs suggested that I contact you, because it is their name that will get them to speak with you, that will get them attention. So yes, that's a very good thing to do. Yeah. Actually, if you're getting someone to introduce to an employer, you're almost better off phoning them directly. Normally the email is just so you feel comfortable in breaking the ice. But yes, you should. If it's an introduction through a third person, always reference the third person in your positioning statement. So let me just give you the final slide, which is about your follow-up support. So the Careers Portal has a lot of information on resumes, covering emails, covering letters. We've recorded this session. You've got each other. You've got alumni. Just make sure you really hone your CV. You really get some very good achievements where you can really demonstrate what value you've added to the company. Because in many cases, it's a tough job market at the moment. But if you can really show people what you can do, you will stand out from the crowd and it will get you to that interview. And that's the really thing. I personally, just as the last one, I would not put salary package on your resume. You want to talk about that. And if possible, you don't want to talk about that until you've got a job offer, assuming it's in the ballpark, because at the point they offer you the job, you have the highest negotiation stance. So invariably leave it off unless you can't get away with doing it. Okay, so I need to say good night to you all, or good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you very much for your input, and good luck with your resumes. And we'll be closing the session now. Thank you very much.